Hey guys, YouTube Boy 100 here, and now I'm starting my horror movie reviews. Today I'm going to review for you guys the movie Scream. I just finished watching the movie just a few minutes ago, and yeah, this was an awesome movie right here, yeah. Well, before I get started with this movie review, I want to talk a little bit about the NLCS, and ALCS series that are going on now in baseball. Yeah, so yeah, the National League Championship Series is starting today between the St. Louis Cardinals and the Los Angeles Dodgers. And the Cardinals got into this by beating the Pittsburgh Pirates in the division series, and the Dodgers got into it by beating the Atlanta Braves. And in the American League Championship Series, we have the Boston Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers. And yeah, the Red Sox got into it by beating the Tampa Bay Rays in the division series. And the Tigers just got into it by beating the Oakland A's last night. And yeah, I'm a little bit upset about Tigers beating the Athletics for the second year in a row in the division series, yeah. I was kind of hoping that the A's would beat them and make it further in. Yeah, I would have liked to see them win the World Series, although I don't know why. I'm not really that big of a fan of the A's. Yeah. And I'm pretty upset too that the Dodgers won the division series also. I mean, I do not want the Dodgers to win this at all. I mean, they don't deserve this after what they did on our turf with the Diamondbacks after they won the National League West. I mean, just celebrating in our pool. Really, I mean, yeah, they do not deserve to win after they did that. Yeah. I'm sorry, yeah, I'm still getting a cough. It's going down little by little, but yeah, I'm still getting it. I'm really sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just really hoping that the Cardinals really do beat the Dodgers in the championship series. And yeah, I think maybe I would kind of like to see the Tigers beat the Red Sox in the championship series for the American League too. Yeah. I'd kind of like to see the World Series come down to the Cardinals and the Tigers. I would like to see that in the World Series. So yeah, we'll just see what happens in these National League and American League Championship Series, which two of the four teams will advance to the World Series. So yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens with these two teams. Alright, so yeah. Okay. Now. Okay. Now, Scream review. Yeah, as I said, I just finished watching it a few minutes ago, and I really do like this. This is probably, I could quite possibly say this is my favorite horror movie of all time right here. I really do like this movie. I mean, it's a really good movie, and it's really violent, and yeah, it's just a really great movie. I give this about 3.5 stars out of 4. Or yeah, I mean, it's a really good movie. That's all. And yeah, it has and it really has balls. I mean, yeah, I mean, big time actress Drew Barrymore killed at the beginning of the movie. I mean, really. Yeah. And most of you may know, when this movie was released, the horror movie genre was basically on life support. Or by this time, yeah. And luckily for this movie, this kind of revived the horror movie genre. Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, I give this movie 3.5 stars out of 4. Alright, so let me just get right into the movie. Alright, so the movie starts with the killer calling Casey Becker, who's played by Drew Barrymore. Yeah, it starts off kind of like a normal conversation. He's just toying with her, asking her like what her favorite scary movie is. Yeah. And then, yeah, he asks if she has a boyfriend, and she tells him no. And then he asks for her name, and when she asks why, he said it was because he wants to know who he's looking at. And that's when the tables turn on this conversation. Then it starts getting really heated up. And yeah, Casey Becker, she's expecting something here. I mean, she knows that he's somewhere around there. And then she starts to hang up on him. And yeah, she just tells him that she doesn't want to talk to him anymore. And when he keeps calling, she yells at him, and then he says back at her if she hangs up on him again that he'll gut her like a fish. Then he calls her Blondie, and then she just starts locking all the doors. Then she starts looking out the window. The killer asks if she can see him. And then, yeah, he tells her that if she calls the police wouldn't even make it in time. They're like out in the middle of nowhere. And he says that he'd like to know what her insides look like. See what her insides look like, rather. And then the doorbell rings, and then she asks who's there. And then he tells her that she should never ask who's there. And she says that she'll call her boyfriend to be there in like 5 minutes or something. And yeah, she said that she lied about telling him that she doesn't have a boyfriend. Yeah, and then he says his name wouldn't be Steve, would it? And she asked how she knew his name. He told her to turn on the patio light, and then she saw that Steve was taped up in a chair, and you saw like blood on the side of his face or something. And he said that he wanted to play a game or else Steve would die. And so she was asked horror movie trivia by him. He asked what the name of the killer in Halloween was as a warm-up question. She got it right. She said Michael Myers. When it came to the real question, he tricked her, asked her who the killer in Friday the 13th was, and she said Jason. And so like she saw the movie 20 times or something, and he said it was wrong. She should know that Jason's mother was the original killer in the first movie, and Jason didn't come along till the sequel. And then he wound up killing Steve. You couldn't see him killing, but you heard like him being stabbed something. And then you just saw his head like gaze down like that. And then we saw like there was a bunch of blood around his gut area. Then he gave her a bonus round for her. Yeah. He asked her what door he was at, whether front door or patio door. She didn't want to answer, so he broke the glass from one of the doors, and then she ran off, grabbed a kitchen knife, went outside, and then she saw her parents' car was pulling up. But then the killer eventually caught her, chased her down, and then stabbed her in the chest. Yes, and then she was down, and then she kicked him in the nuts. But by that time, it was kind of too late. And she saw her parents walking into the house. She tried calling them, but she was just too weak to speak. Then she just fell down. Then she pulled the mask off of the killer as the killer was stabbing her to death. Her parents came in and saw how bad the house looked. I mean, there was a fire because she was popping popcorn, and yeah, it was starting to burn. And yeah, they saw the mess with the broken glass and stuff, and saw that Casey wasn't home. And they tried calling the police, and then yeah, Casey never hung up the phone, so they could hear her like making the noises as she was being stabbed, and as the killer was like dragging her down. And then as they went outside, they saw that she was hanging. Her body was hanging from a tree. And then we cut over to main character Sydney Prescott, who's played by Neve Campbell, and then her boyfriend Billy. Yeah, I'm really sorry about this. Yeah, I wish this cough would just stop. I know I've had it for like 2 weeks or something, but yeah. Yeah, it just will not go away. But yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just get back into this thing. Yeah, so Sydney's boyfriend, Billy Loomis, popped up from her window, and her father heard her screaming. Yeah, she said nothing was wrong, and her father told her that he would be leaving town for a few days and he wouldn't be back till Sunday. And then Billy was telling Sydney about how their relationship's kind of gone down, how they were escalating up to an NC-17 or something. Then they started to make out a little bit with their clothes on. Billy tried to like put his hand underneath Sydney's nightgown or something, but Sydney stopped him. And then, yeah, as Billy was leaving, he asked Billy if he would settle for a PG-13 relationship. He asked what it was, and she exposed her boob to him. Yeah. And then the next morning, And at the school, well, there were a bunch of news reporters there, and Sydney's best friend Tatum, who was played by Rose McGowan, she was telling Sydney what was going on. And then the police were interrogating like everybody at the school, in the principal's office, who the Principal Henry, who was played by Henry Winkler. And then it was Sydney's turn to be interrogated or whatever, and she was interrogated by the police sheriff and one of the deputies, Dewey, who was Tatum's brother. He was played by David Arquette. Yeah. And then we saw Sydney, Billy, Tatum, and Tatum's boyfriend Stu, who was played by Matthew Lillard, and our other friend Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy. And like Randy was kind of suspecting that Stu might have been the one who killed Casey and Steve, but Tatum told Randy that Stu was with her last night. And then Tatum asked Randy where he was, and Randy said that he was working last night at the video store. Yeah, and then, yeah, they were just making like a bunch of organ jokes or something, like Stu was saying "live her alone." He was just telling them it was a joke. And then back at Sydney's house, as she was getting ready to, she was packing up to stay the night over at Tatum's. As she was watching TV, like every channel had news reporters talking about that double murder. And one of the reporters, Gail Weathers, who's played by Courtney Cox, she was talking about how the same thing was kind of happening with, well, not was happening, happened with Sydney's mother just a year before. Yeah, Sydney just decided to turn off the TV, and then she took a nap waiting for Tatum. As Tatum called saying she was on her way, Sydney then got a call from the killer. And the killer was pretty much doing the same thing with Sydney as he was doing with Casey, like toying with her. Yeah, Sydney thought that the killer was Randy, and then gosh, God, I wish I would just stop coughing already. Yeah. Then the killer told Sydney she was not Randy, and then he told Sydney that he was waiting on her front porch, and Sydney was saying that she was calling his bluff. Yeah, and when she opened the door to check her porch, there was no killer there. Yeah, and then Sydney asked the killer if he could see her, and he said yes. And when Sydney, like, she was picking her nose, asking the killer what she was doing, and the killer didn't respond. And so, yeah, Sydney was just like saying, "Nice try." Hi. And then the killer told her that if he hung up on her, she would die like her mother. Yeah, and then Sydney just told the killer, "Fuck you." And Sydney went back inside. The killer popped out of Sydney's closet, tried to kill her, and then he pinned Sydney down. He headbutted her, and he was about to stab her with the knife, but Sydney kicked him off. And then the killer chased Sydney upstairs to her room. Then Sydney was about to call 911, but then the killer just disappeared. And then Billy popped up from the window again, and he was trying to comfort Sydney. He's saying it was alright, that the killer was gone or something. And then Billy dropped his cell phone. And then Sydney, he suspected that Billy might have been the killer. And then she ran downstairs and she opened her front door and she saw Dewey with the ghost face mask. Yeah. And then the police took Billy down to the police station and needed Sydney to come along too, so they could question her. Yeah. And then as they were leaving, Gail and her cameraman Kenny were arriving. They were trying to get an interview with Sydney, but she took off. And then Gail was trying to ask Tatum questions, but Tatum wasn't answering. Yeah. And then over at the police station, Sydney and Dewey were trying to find Sydney's father, but yeah, they couldn't find him. They said that Dewey told Sydney that her father wasn't registered at the place that he said he would be staying at. And then the sheriff was also interrogating Billy and his father, asking him like what he was doing at Sydney's house. And Billy was just saying that he wanted to see her, and the sheriff was asking him if he also stopped by Casey Becker's house, and Billy was just telling the sheriff that he didn't do anything. and the sheriff told Billy that he'd need to stay until they were able to get his phone bill. Oh yeah, and Dewey was telling the sheriff that the costume that the killer was wearing is sold like every place in the state, and so they couldn't possibly find them by the costume. And that they wouldn't know if Billy would be making the calls to Sydney or not till the morning. And then as they were leaving, Gail and Kenny walked around the back where they got out from, and then Gail was trying to interview Sydney again, and Sydney was just telling Gail that she'd look for a book, and Gail told Sydney that she'd send her a copy, and then Sydney just punched Gail right in the face, and Gail went down. And then over at Tatum's house, Sydney got another call from the killer, and yeah, he was just calling her like poor Billy or whatever. Yeah, and he told Sydney that she'd find out who the killer was soon enough. And then the next morning, Sydney, there was some other news reporter that was out saying stuff about Sydney's mother being killed, and then we saw who Sydney thought was the guy who killed her mother, Cotton Weary, and the reporter was saying like he is awaiting the death sentence that Sydney put on him or whatever, which we would find out would be a gas chamber. And then Dewey told Sydney that Billy was released and he was the one who made the calls. And then over at the school, Sydney was talking with Gail about Cotton Weary, saying that he was the one who did it by butchering her, that he butchered her and stuff, and he was wearing something with blood on it. And Gail was telling Sydney that she thinks that she falsely accused him and that Cotton was being framed. And Sydney was just really certain that Cotton was the one that did it. And then, as Sydney and Tatum left, Gail was telling Kenny that they need proof that Cotton's innocent and that if they're right, they could save a man's life. And then in the school hallway, there was some guy in a Ghostface costume running down the hall, like screaming, trying to like get at Sydney or something. And then Sydney was ran away from that. She ran into Billy, and then Billy he was saying that he couldn't have made that call to Sydney over at Tatum's because he was in jail. And then he compared Sydney's mother's death to his parents divorcing. And then Sydney told him that it wasn't the same thing. And then Principal Himbry was confronting two students that were wearing Ghostface masks, and he was saying that they were heartless because two of their fellow students, Casey and Steve, were savagely murdered, and that's the way they show their compassion. And then he expelled both of them, and then both guys were telling Principal Himbry that they were just joking and it wasn't fair. And then Principal Himbry said that they were right, and then fair would be to rip their insides out and hang them from a tree, and he was holding scissors up to them, kind of threatening them. And then in the girls' bathroom, there was some bitch cheerleader that was like talking a bunch of smack about Sydney and her mother, saying like she was lying or something. Yeah, I was hoping that she'd die. Yeah. And then, then as Sydney was just at the sink, she saw like there were the killer's legs, and then he was putting on the black robe. And Sydney just like slid it underneath him, and then ran out of the bathroom. And then Gail went up to Dewey and started to talk to him. Him saying like he looked kind of young to be a police officer. Then Principal Himbry over the intercom said that all classes would be suspended until further notice, and that the police department issued a citywide curfew beginning at 9 o'clock that night. And then Gail asked Dewey if they had found Sydney's father, and Dewey told Gail that they haven't ruled him out as a possible suspect yet. And then as everyone was leaving the school, Stu told Sydney and Tatum that he'd have a party over at his house tonight. And then we saw Principal Henry in his office kind of like scaring himself with the ghost face mask, and then he kept getting a couple knocks on the door, but there was no answer. So we searched around the entire front office, and he couldn't find anyone. And he searched in his closet, and there was nothing. Yeah. And then as he closed his office door, the killer then appeared and killed Principal Henry. And then Sydney and Tatum were having a conversation about possibly being innocent, and Sydney asked how come Khan couldn't prove that they had an affair in court, and Tatum told Sydney that they couldn't prove a rumor, and Sydney said the killer could still possibly be out there. Then we got over to the video store with Randy and Stu, who Randy, being the horror movie expert that he is, he told Stu all the possibilities of being in a horror movie, and he said that Cindy's father could possibly be dead. And he then said everyone was a suspect. And then Billy came from behind and asked Randy how do they know he's not the killer. And Randy said that if it was a scary movie that he would be a possible suspect. And then later on we saw that the sheriff was talking to Dewey, saying that all the calls came from Sydney's father's phone. And then Dewey asked if there was any way that his cell phone could have been cloned. And the sheriff was saying that they'd keep the curfew in through all of the night. And if the father was not picked up by morning, they do a house to house. And then we cut over to Stu's party at his house, and we saw that Gail and Kenny had a video camera, and Dewey and Gail went in to check out the party, and then Gail put like a video camera like on top of the VCR or something, and then Stu sent Tatum down to the garage to get some beers. And then she was locked in and the garage door closed. And then Tatum saw the killer, and then she was like toying with him, saying like she wanted to be in the sequel or something. Yeah. And then the killer then sliced Tatum's arm with the knife. And then Tatum started to fight the killer, like she swung the freezer door in his face. And then she was throwing some glass beer bottles at him. And then Tatum tried to escape through the garage doggy door. And then the killer raised up the garage door. And then, with Tatum stuck in the doggy door. And then Tatum was crushed between the thing that the garage door goes in. Yeah. And then Billy popped up in the front door. And then Stu allowed Sydney and Billy to go up to his parents' room to talk. Yeah, and then we saw in Gail and Kenny's van that they were getting the video from the camera, but it was a 30-second delay. And then we got like a call from the sheriff saying like there was a car down the hill someplace, and he invited Gail to go check it out with him. And as Stu, Randy, and all the kids that were at the party, they were watching Halloween. Randy was telling them like the rules to survive a scary movie, like never have sex and never do drugs or drink, and then never say I'll be right back. Yeah. And then we saw Billy and Sydney talking in Stu's parents' rooms. They were both saying they've been selfish, and Sydney was just afraid that she may end up like her mother. And then as Stu was comforting her, Sydney was like saying something about being in a porno. So then Billy and Sydney were then having sex in the room. And you could see like they were taking their clothes off. And it was also during the part they were watching Halloween. It was like some sex moment also. So we could hear them like reacting to it also. Sorry. Yeah. And then we saw some more kids leaving the party. And then Randy got a call, all saying that Principal Henry was dead and that he was hanging from the football field. So all the kids that were still there, they left to go see it. And as Gail and Dewey were taking their walk, the kids in the cars were just speeding away, and then they jumped off of the road. And then as they started to make out, they saw the car they were talking about, and it turned out it was Sydney's father's car, and they needed to get back to the house. And then, yeah, as Sydney and Billy were getting redressed, Sydney was saying that it would be clever if Billy was the killer to use his one phone call to call Sydney again, and it would have made sense for him. It's for that call she got from the killer at Tatum's house. And Billy just kept saying, well, he asked her what he needed to do to prove to Sydney that he wasn't the killer. Then the killer popped from behind, and he, quote-unquote, stabbed Billy. And when Billy turned around, you could see there was blood on his shirt. And then he passed out. Then the killer was chasing Sydney around Stu's house. Then Sydney, like, she jumped from the upstairs window down to the outside. And then she saw Tatum's body stuck in the garage door. And then Dewey went inside to check it out, see if the killer was there. And then Sydney then went over to the fan with Kenny. They saw what was going to happen. There was a 30-second delay. You saw the killer was with Randy. Kenny was about to go out and try to help him. But yeah, there was a 30-second delay, so we stuck around to see what happened. And then the killer popped up and slit Kenny's throat, and it killed Kenny. And then Sydney escaped the van from the back. And then when Gail came back to the van, she saw there was a bunch of blood there. When she tried to call the police, Randy popped up from the window, the car window, and Gail just nailed Randy with the phone a couple times. And then she saw there was a bunch of blood on the windshield, and she wiped it off. And she saw Kenny's body on the for the car, and then she just like swerved to get him off. As she was driving, Sydney was in front. She was heading toward him, and then she swerved off of the road down into a tree or something. And then Sydney saw that Dewey, he was stabbed in the back by the killer with his knife. And then Sydney went to the car, and then she locked the doors, Dewey's car. And then she saw the killer had the keys. So she was just locking the door, and then the killer opened up the back of the car. And as Sydney was on the radio trying to call for help, she got out of the car. And the killer disappeared, and then she saw both Randy and Stu kept saying, like, they need to leave or something, and then she grabbed Dewey's gun and just told him to stay back. And then she locked them both out of the house. And then we saw Billy again. He, like, rolled down the stairs, and he told Sydney to give her the gun. He opened the door. Randy came in. He said that Stu's gone mad. And then Billy quoted that we all go a little mad sometimes. And then he shot Randy in the shoulder. And yeah, Billy was revealed as one of the killers. And then all that blood that was on his shirt was just corn syrup. Then Stu came, and then he told Sydney that he had the voice changer. He said, "Surprise, Sydney." And so they were just toying around with Sydney some more, and then Billy told Sydney why he was doing it. He told Sydney it was because he said that her mother was sleeping with his father, and that's why his mom left. And then Stu then grabbed Sydney's father, and he was all taped up, and then they put the cell phone and the voice changer in his shirt pocket. And they said that Cotton Weary was easy to frame. And they showed Sydney like they couldn't die or whatever. because they were stabbing each other in the side with the knife. And as they were ready to kill Cindy and her father, the gun was missing, and then turned out Gail had the gun. She said that she'd kill them, but the safety was on, so Billy kicked her into a pillar or something and knocked her out. But before he could shoot her, Cindy and her father disappeared. Then Cindy was on the phone, pretty much doing the same thing that Billy and Stu have been doing. As the killer, she had the killer voice, and she told him that she called the police and reported them. And then Stu couldn't do anything because he was cut too deep and he was starting to die. And then as Billy was looking around for Cindy was hiding in the closet dressed as the killer. Then she poked Billy with an umbrella or something and knocked him out. Then Stu went after Cindy, told her that he always had a thing for her. Cindy bit Stu in the arm and then smashed a vase over his head and then pushed the TV on top of his face, killing him. And then Randy recovered. He wasn't killed. Yeah, he said that he never thought he'd be so happy to be a virgin. Then Billy punched Randy in the face and struck him down again. As he was about to kill Sydney, then Gail shot Billy. Then Randy was held back up, and then Randy told Sydney that this was the part where the supposedly dead killer comes back for one last scare. And that's what happened. Billy got back up one more time, and then Sydney shot him in the head. And then then Billy was finished. Sydney said, "Not in my movie." Then they freed Sydney's father from the tape. Then Dewey was loaded into an ambulance. And then Gil was just rehearsing what she was going to say on the news next time. And that's how it ended. So yeah, 3.5 stars out of 4. Alright, so that's my review of Scream. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you stuck around for the whole thing. Yeah, sorry this went over 30 minutes, but yeah, there was a lot to cover, and including what I said in the beginning about the NLCS and ALCS. Alright, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.